Cinderella is a movie I would not normally have seen. This is an example of a single name attached to the project bringing me to the theater. Regulars who know my videos and my preferences will doubtless already know who I'm talking about. In keeping with a recent trend, Cinderella is a live-action remake of the classic animated film, both of them made by Disney. The story is also touched up a bit for story purposes, but is otherwise a very traditionalist interpretation of, Cinderella. We get Cinderella's happy childhood, only to have her parents killed off and replaced with an evil stepmother who slowly turns Cinderella into a servant girl for herself and her two spoiled daughters. Cinderella bears it all with endless patience, as she was taught by her mother to have courage and kindness. Then one day the king of the land arranges a large ball to find a bride for his son, and pretty much anyone with a passing knowledge of Cinderella knows what happens after that. So how did this version turn out? Well, it certainly feels like a Disney film. The settings are picturesque and whimsical, almost like it would look like in Disneyland itself. And while a lot of it was CGI, there was still a great amount of work put into the way the film looks. As to the casting, I think Lily James was well suited as Cinderella. Given she's a fairly new face in mainstream Hollywood, she did a great job holding her own in the scenes that she shared with the more experienced actors. And for what it's worth, any blandness of the character is not her fault. The same could be said for Richard Madden as Kit, or aka Prince Charming. Frankly, I'm very glad that they gave him a name and some genuine character depth this time, if for nothing else than to actually make use of the talented actor that they got to play this thankless role. And yes, when watching the scene where they dance together in the ball, I did amusedly wonder what would have happened if Reigns of Castamere started playing. Anyway, there's also Cinderella's stepmother, played by Cate Blanchett. Just like with Indiana Jones 4, Blanchett gets to ham it up in this role and be a really mean villain. Now, of course, in this version they make her a jealous and arrogant social climber who resents how Cinderella's father never stopped loving his deceased first wife more than he loved her. And that's interesting. That actually justifies her anger towards Cinderella, in a way. And let's be frank, it makes for more development than the Disney version did. But just like with Indiana Jones 4, I just don't really like Blanchett in the all-and-out villain performance. Aside from those three main characters, we have Sophie McShera and Holiday Granger as the stepsisters. We have Ben Chaplin and Haley Atwell as Cinderella's parents, Derek Jacobi as the king, Stellan Skarsgård as the Grand Duke, Nonso Anozie as the captain, and Helena Bonham Carter as the fairy godmother. All of them play their parts well, especially Jacobi and Anozie. And it's the fact that the cast and crew were so talented that really makes me wish they'd had a better story to work with. Even as a kid, I considered Cinderella to be one of my least favorite Disney films. And it's not because the film was poorly animated or had bad music, but the story makes for some really bland main characters, especially the protagonist. Cinderella is not an interesting protagonist in either version. She endures a lot of hardship and toil, sure, and the live-action movie does do a much better job explaining how she got into that situation in the first place, but her life is only improved through the benefits of others helping her rather than her seeking out help or doing something herself. And the climax of this film shoots itself in the foot by showing just how easily Cinderella could do something, but instead she passively sits around while others act to help her. I understand this is a retelling of a classic story, but frankly, they should have moved away from the traditional telling in my opinion. And it's not like Kenneth Branagh is unused to that. He's always been a progressive man when dealing with old stories. Just look at his Shakespeare films. He was always racially blind when casting roles. He's put the stories in different settings or time periods. And Disney has been modernizing female roles for the last few years with Frozen and Maleficent. Why did they decide to continue making Cinderella so passive even when her chance at freedom is perfectly within her grasp. And that aside, the blandness factor bleeds into the other main roles, though at least the prince and the stepmother get slightly more development to make them more rounded human beings. Of course, that only goes so far, but it worked a little better in their cases, let's be honest. All in all, Cinderella will certainly be a huge hit. Kids will like it, the parents will appreciate having another Disney film for the family to enjoy, but frankly, I thought it was a middling film at best. In fact, I would go so far as to say that Cinderella's cast and crew were wasted on a boring story that has not aged well. And it makes me wish that Kenneth Branagh would finally make Macbeth or King Lear one of these days.